to the top. Morning, everyone. We'd like to welcome y'all to the Mississippi Advisory Commission meeting for May 16th. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask Commissioner Roberts to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cam. All right, Director, would you like to lead us with a prayer?
I would, and I just want to first off tell everybody that in times of this boating season and everything coming up, please be careful. Please understand that there's a lot of things that can happen to you on the water, and especially for some fishermen and all. And we just ask you to be safe out there because it is very dangerous, and we want to pray for you. Lord, I ask you just to please take this commission and give us the wisdom, give them the wisdom to do what they need to do, and give the agency the wisdom to be able to enforce that, Lord. And let us do the things the way you would have it done, and keep each and every one of us safe. We ask this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Joe. All right, approval of minutes. Do we have any discussion on the April 18th minutes? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Approval of the agenda for today's meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Joe, it's all yours.
Okay, let's see if we got, first thing up we want to talk about is the employment contracts, and trying to get this thing to work this morning. All right, we got a couple of new hires. Brian Drilling is starting he started in April as Law Enforcement Officer 1 for Marine Patrol, and then Tyler Williams started on May the 8th as the ENR Specialist 1 with the CRM permitting. I had a promotion with Jacob Goff. He's promoted on April 16th to ENR Specialist 2 with the Grand Bay Near. We got several new interns that are coming in, and the list is there for you if you want to look at them. But we appreciate that because the one thing about the interns, there's quite a few people sitting in this agency today that were interns. I'm looking at one right now, and I'm looking at a couple out there. So they were interns with us, and they came to work with us, and we was able to see about the department. We was able to see how they operated, and in turn, we were able to hire them, and that's worked out very good. So I would like to continue this internship stuff. I think I think getting these kids here is just great, and they're these young leaders, and they're coming up, and I appreciate that. Any questions on the contract? I don't think there's any contracts out there. Anything else? All right, agency update. Well, let's see. We got red snapper season coming. So we put it out the other day. It'll be the first week, it's 26th, I think, of May. So that's on a Friday, and we'll open it up, and that's before Memorial Day. We expect a good turnout. It looks like the weather might be holding out to be pretty decent during that time. We have been cut back. If the number of snappers around 62,000 pounds that we have right now. But we're going to look at it, and we're trying to work with NOAA, and we're trying to work with the council to be able to see if we can maybe come up with some additional poundage to do what we need to do. We'll start it, and it'll basically be open from Memorial Day weekend till at least after the 4th of July. And then we'll see where we're at that point. But hopefully the snapper are plentiful out there. From what I'm hearing, it looking good. So let's get ready for a good snapper season. Any questions on that? All right. Blessing of the Fleet will be that weekend also. And so we're going to have the Blessing of the Fleet coming up. And so anybody that would like to participate that we'd appreciate it. And it's always a great thing to be able to ask the Lord to help us. And that's what we're doing. And that's what they're doing. They're asking the Lord to bless the shrimpers and the fishermen. And so we just ask that if you'd like to, just be a part of that. DMR will be closed on Monday, May 29th for Memorial Day. And we got a one thing that has happened. If you didn't notice, but Louisiana went up on their license, so for out-of-state license, and so we have done the same. And so if you look at it now, our new license I think starts on is it 1st of May, I believe it is, that it started. That if your basic fishing license, if you're for Louisiana is now $68, and saltwater license is $60. So it went up. It was 60 and 30, and so it went up to 68. So we're doing that now. We're charging $60 and 30, and so for that. So if you get anybody any questions, the reason it went up on it is because Louisiana went up, and that's what we do. We just basically mirror what they do. Once they go up, we go up. And Alabama did not go up, so we didn't go up with Alabama. So they stay in the same.
Just to clarify that, Joe, that's for out-of-state
Yeah,
residents,
out of
not
state, yeah.
residents.
Yeah, not for in-state, out-of-state only. Yes. And for the Louisiana people coming over, I hope it's not too much of an inconvenience, but we have to just follow the rules what they are. All right, a little bit on our derelict vessels. We've had 99 derelict vessel cases have been reported. We have 65 of them been removed. We got 34 of them that's pending removal, and we don't have any in court right now. So the team's doing a great job. They're getting the vessels moved. They're trying to do things. If you have a derelict vessel and if you see something and you don't know if it's been reported or not, just call us. Let us know, and we'll definitely be able to look at it and see if it is. And if it's already being worked on, we'll take it. We have a grant that's coming to us in July the 1st, and we have a federal grant through GOMA that's going to help pay for this. And so we'll be able to use some of that money too, along with the state. The state to give us some money, and between the two, we ought to be able to be pretty good to be able to get to the derelict vessels out that we need to. So hopefully that'll work out. Let's see. I don't know of anything. I'm looking right here. Is anything else? I think as far as the Wildlife Foundation, we met with them, and we are, once again, we're part of the Wildlife Foundation. We're working with them, and we're trying to set up a couple of things to be able to do some different type tournaments, different type events here on the coast with saltwater, and so hopefully we'll be able to do that. And I don't see it happening this year because it's kind of, it takes about a year to get things put in place. So hopefully next year we'll be able to have a couple of tournaments or something that we're sponsoring on it and be able to help. We are sponsoring, we just got asked yesterday to be able to help sponsor some events for some children. And one of them's on, Charmaine, was that 15 May? One of them 15 June, right? 15 June, and then there's one in July. And then there's a women's tournament, saltwater tournament that we're sponsoring also. So we're out there trying to help out. We want to get the people out and want them to be able to understand that we're working hard to get more people involved in fishing, and hopefully it'll work out. All right, any questions on any of that? All right, agency update. I didn't forget you this time.
You did good. Okay, at the April meeting, the commission recommended and the director approved another no wake zone for Jackson County Board of Supervisors. It was referred to as proposed leg 4. This was part of a package that they sent over, I think it was June or July of last year. The 2 of the 4 were approved at that time, and the leg 4 was tabled for further information. And that information was presented last month, and it was approved. It's at the Fort Bayou Bridge in Ocean Springs. And that is all.
Okay. Anything on that? Any questions? All right, Patrick, coming up, we got 3 resolutions that we'd like to ask the commission to approve. And one is renaming the Dantzler track to the Secretary of State Clark Coastal Preserve, and other one is a resolution to rename the Big Island to Galad Island and name the breakwater improvement on the south side of the island to be designated as Godfather Point. And this is in reference to our senator of over 50 years, Senator Tommy Galat, who did great for us, and we appreciate him. And then we also have one that we're renaming the Oyster Reef after the Nature Conservancy to Tony Chapani Reef in Bay St. Louis. And Tony was a great benefit for the whole agency and the whole estuary, because he worked hard every day trying to help us, and we appreciated him. And Tony would tell you how it felt. He didn't have to ask the questions. He'd tell you exactly how he felt about things. And but you know, his heart was always in the right place, and that was to be able to take care of what would we need as far as an estuary and take care of the conservation of the fisheries and all. So Patrick's going to read these in, and then we'll move forward at that point.
Well, good morning, and as Director Spraggan said, we'll be going over a couple resolutions. The first two that I'm going to be discussing are in accordance with Senate Bill 2530 that Governor Reeves signed into law on April 13th, 2023. And so it's a privilege to be able to read each of these, because I did have the opportunity to know Senator Galat for a very long time. And there's no doubt in my mind that Eric Clark was a good man. And so get the opportunity to do this today. The first resolution that we'll be reading into the minutes today is resolution number 051623-01. It says, whereas the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources is a duly constituted governmental entity created to serve the great state of Mississippi, and said service includes the preservation of the natural state of the coastal wetlands and their ecosystems, which includes the management of Mississippi's coastal preserves, and the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources acknowledges contribution to the betterment of the coastal wetlands throughout the Gulf of Mexico through significant biological, industrial, legislative, enforcement, or administrative activities. And whereas Secretary of State Eric Clark was instrumental in acquiring what is now designated as the Dantzler Tract, 925 acres located in the Pascagoula River marshes in Jackson County, Mississippi. And the property was acquired in 1997 with funds obtained by Secretary of State Eric Clark as trustee of the Public Trust Tidelands and part of the Mississippi Coastal Preserves Program. In accordance with Senate Bill 2530, and in honor of Secretary of State Clark's role in the development of the program, the Commission recommends the following action. Now, therefore, be it resolved in a duly constituted and assembled meeting that the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources does hereby recommend to the Director of the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources that the tract now designated as a Dantzler Tract be designated as a Secretary of State Eric Clark Coastal Preserve effective July 1st, 2023. Done and resolved is this duly constituted and assembled meeting on this, the 16th day of May, 2023. And so I know that you gentlemen already had the opportunity to look at that resolution and to be able to sign it. And so effective July 1st, 2023, the Dantzler Tract in Jackson County will now be the Eric Clark Preserve. And so we have it on the map here. And Karen, if you could pull it up, I want to go through and show y'all where this is located in Goshen, near the Indian Point area. And if you'll go to the next slide, that's the Secretary of State Eric Clark Coastal Preserve. And additionally, in this piece of legislation, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, in conjunction with the Office of Secretary of State, are further authorized to erect appropriate markers and signs indicating the location of the Secretary of State Eric Clark Coastal Preserve. And we're already in motion to where we're not going to be looking at changing these signs, but already looking at an opportunity of how we're going to designate some of the kiosks and put some signage out there on the property effective July the 1st.
Yeah, and we will do a official presentation of this sometime after around the middle of August. So that's when we've looked at it, and I think we'll be able to do that somewhere in the August timeframe.
Yes, sir. All right, the second resolution that we're going to talk about today and present is 051623-02. And as I mentioned, this is the one that's going to be talking about Galot Island and Godfather Point, and having the opportunity to be with the agency quite a few years. There have been many times that Senator Galot fought for this agency, and not only for this agency, but for the resources on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I was able to watch that for many years, the contributions that he made to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Whereas the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources, a duly constituted governmental entity created to serve the great state of Mississippi, and said service includes the preservation of the natural state of the coastal wetlands and their ecosystems, which includes the management of Mississippi's coastal preserves and any matters pertaining to Mississippi saltwater aquatic life and marine resources. And the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources acknowledges contribution to the betterment of the coastal wetlands and marine resources throughout the Gulf of Mexico through significant biological, industrial, legislative, enforcement, or administrative activities, and in accordance with Senate Bill 2530 and in honor of the role Senator Thomas A. Galot played in the development of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the Commission recommends the following action. Designate what is now as Big Island, 57 acres, located at physical address of 0, mouth of Back Bay, and more particularly described as patent number 1211672, Big Island, Lot 2 of Section 22-7-9, a swamp and overflowed land located at the mouth of the Back Bay of Biloxi in Harrison County, Mississippi, as Galot Island. Further, the Commission recommends that the breakwater improvements to the south side of the island be designated as Godfather Point. Now, therefore, it be resolved in a duly constituted and assembled meeting that the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources does hereby recommend to the Director of the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources that the tract now be designated as the Big Island be designated as Galot Island, and the breakwater improvement on the south side of the island be designated as Godfather Point, effective July 1st, 2023. And as Director Spraggan said, we are working on signage for that location to be able to designate it, and we'll be looking somewhere in August, moving on, making sure that we recognize that property and make it public. And so, like the previous, Karen, if you'll look here, Big Island is located inside of Back Bay. And the next slide, there's Galot Island, and there are the breakwater improvements. If you've been out there, DEQ has been working on a project with a lot of riprap and making a breakwater around the island on that eastern side, but Godfather Point is on that side. And so just a great way to recognize the efforts of Senator Galot, and we will be doing a public presentation in the months to come.
Yeah, and for the ones who didn't know, back in the early 90s, we used to be the Bureau of Marine Resources, and because of Senator Tommy Galot, we're now the Department of Marine Resources. He was the one who was instrumental in getting that done for us and being able to change this agency to a standalone agency, and we owe him a lot. So we appreciate that and look forward to hopefully getting to see him before that.
Well, as mentioned, both of the resolutions that we just discussed become effective July the 1st, 2023. The resolution that I'm about to read, it can go into effect immediately, and that's resolution number 051623-03. Now, Karen, I'm going to have you go ahead. I'm going to change order here. If you'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, we're going to be talking about a project. This is a National Fish and Wildlife Federation funding that they're giving to the Nature Conservancy to put in some reef inside of the Bay of St. Louis. And I can say that while this project's been coming alive, it's very similar, I guess, to maybe when somebody finds out they're having a kid and like, what are we going to name this thing? And lots of people have been reaching out to the agency saying that we want to make sure that this reef is named after Tony Trapani and the efforts that he's done. And it's just been numerous people that have done that, have recognized the efforts of Tony and said, you know what, even though this is in the makings, we want to make sure we know what it's going to be called, because he deserves it. We want to recognize his efforts and his love for the resources on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So this resolution reads this way. The Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources is a duly constituted governmental entity created to serve the great state of Mississippi, and said service includes the management and enforcement of any matters pertaining to Mississippi saltwater aquatic life and marine resources. And the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources acknowledges contribution to the betterment of the fisheries of the Gulf of Mexico through significant biological, industrial, legislative, enforcement, or administrative activities. Whereas Tony Trapani graduated from St. Stanislaus in 1982 and from Southeastern Louisiana in 1993 with a communications degree. His passion for food led him to start Trapani's Eatery in the Bay of St. Louis in 1994, now the oldest seafood restaurant on the coast. Tony was a true conservationist concerned with protecting the waters of the Gulf and served as the first president of the Bay chapter of the Coastal Conservation Association. And Tony's love for the Bay was evident. As an icon of the tourism industry, he left his mark on the heart and soul of all he met and loved, and he put the Bay on the map as a sought-after tourism attraction for the coast. Now, therefore, be it resolved in a duly constituted and assembled meeting that the Mississippi Advisory Commission on Marine Resources does hereby recommend to the Director of the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources that the oyster reef constructed by the Nature Conservancy in the Bay of St. Louis, Mississippi, with the central location of latitude 30.346390 degrees north and longitude 80.28942232 degrees west, be named the Tony Trapani Reef. Done and resolved in this duly constituted and assembled meeting on this, the 16th day of May, 2023. And so, effective today, this project and the future development of this project, and one day just a beautiful place for people to be able to go enjoy the resources of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, will be known as the Tony Trapani Reef. And today, I believe that we have some family and friends that are here. And I don't know if any of y'all would like to share anything. Just a brief sharing, but another thing we'd love to do is for the commission to be able to take a picture with y'all and provide y'all a copy of the resolution. So for the family and friends, if y'all could stand, and commission, if it's okay.
Patrick, before we get to that, we're going to make this official real quick.
Y'all make it official.
Do we have a motion to approve all three resolutions and renaming these places?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion. All in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right,
To
thank you.
introduce, these are Tony's children, his daughter Grace, and his son Joseph, and one of his all-time fishing buddies too is Alex Murray. It's a true honor that Tommy and CCA of St. Louis has approached. Tommy's the current president of CCA. Dunny, huge with CCA. You know, everybody. Thank y'all for the honor. And Tony's gone too soon, for sure. But the reef in his name, you guys made it happen, where his memory will live on forever. And he probably kissed every fish that he let go to breed and make more. And I know it's going to be a lot of fun fishing on that reef, whether soon. And thank y'all very much. It's a true honor. Thank you, General Spraggins, too.
Yep.
Thank you.
And, Patrick, I think can we get some good, official copies of that and send them to them? And if y'all let us know, we'll send each one of you, okay?
Patrick, next time, let's not do the coordinates. Y'all just gave away one of my honey holes over there. All right.
And I think that's all I have right now, sir.
All right. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate it. Commissioners report. Have any of the commissioners got anything to report? Joe, I've got one question. I don't think we've heard anything about this in a while. Where are we at with the Bonacary funds money?
Well, we're waiting on, I guess it would be NOAA, but, OMB, which is, has it, and they're looking at it, and, they're trying to, decide whether or not, Alabama's had theirs for a month and a half. And, hopefully us in Louisiana will get ours in this month or sometime soon. We've gone back to changing every little thing that we can think of, and just, we're doing everything. Rick, you got any more updates than that? Rick's the one that's handling it for me.
Yeah, I think 2 months ago I mentioned it was getting close. Or I thought it was getting close because they keep asking us to update the dates on the 424, which is a financial form. The latest updated date we had was May the 1st, and it's now May the 16th. So I'm anticipating we'll have to change that form again. But it keeps getting, it feels like it keeps getting closer, but we have not been contacted to say this is your official start date. Once that's approved, they will let us know, and we'll let everybody else know. But right now it's just kind of wait and see. But like I mentioned a couple months ago, we're a lot closer than we were. Like you said, the Alabama's got theirs, and ours should be coming soon.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Nothing else on the commissioner's report. Marine Patrol, Chief Wilkerson.
Good morning. Good to see every one of y'all healthy and here with us today. I'm going to let Captain Michael Strickland do the citation report, and also have some details further that you may want to ask about the air show and all that. So, Michael, if you would.
All right, good morning. Hopefully you had time to review the report that was uploaded. Shouldn't have any issues there to report. Pretty cut and dry. Director did ask me in a prep meeting if we would make a little comment and give some information about the air show that we had April 28th, 29th, and 30th, Thunder Over the Sound. We anticipated a high volume of traffic. Keesler Air Force Base was estimating over 100,000 spectators. We exceeded that. We estimated about 2,200 vessels with spectators during that time frame. Marine Patrol deployed 24 uniformed personnel, 12 different vessel assets, a emergency response dive team, and like I said, it was about 2,100 vessels. And with that amount of traffic, there was only one boat accident during the entire time. It was a minor accident where a vessel broke loose from anchor because of the high winds. But that's just a testament to our officer presence, and also the boating public doing exactly what they're supposed to do to make the show enjoyable and safe for everyone. So be glad to take any questions you have.
Joe touched on it earlier, but safety on the water is the biggest thing, and you guys do a great job. I got stopped the other day on the way in, very professional, very courteous, but just can't stress to people enough how quickly things can go from the best day of the summer to the worst day of your life out there.
It happened very quickly.
Got to pay attention. There's one that's not listed on here, but we had a young girl lose her life on Jordan River last month, and it's I believe Wildlife and Fisheries took care of that one, but
it's listed on the bottom. It's just
okay. I didn't see
just
that
outside our normal AOR. We assisted Mississippi Department of Wildlife and Fisheries with that, and still currently ongoing investigation as well.
Yeah, people just please be safe out there. It can turn real bad real fast.
I tell you what, if you went out for the air show and you didn't see a blue light, you got a problem.
You're in the wrong place.
Yeah, 'cause they were all over that sound, that Mississippi Sound, and not pulling people over, but helping people and keeping people safe. So I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
All right. Office of Coastal Resources Management, giant apple snails. Sierra Ortiz. Did I say that right? Okay, good.
Talk about one of my interns. She was one of them. Now look at her.
Okay. So this presentation is on the 8 years of giant apple snails from the Coastal Preserves team. Pictured here is you can see the size of the apple snail and their bright pink egg masses. Giant apple snail overview. So these snails are freshwater snails native to South America. They are very large. They can grow up to 6 inches long. They have one long and one gill. The females are larger than the males. They mature within 60 to 80 days. They produce 2,500 eggs per mass, and they hatch between 10 to 14 days. Their environmental impact. They strip marsh of vegetation. They change the plant community to algal based. They can be a carrier of rat lungworm parasite. They're a predator of amphibian eggs, and they have very few predators in Mississippi. Picture to the right, you can see the limpkin bird. They are native to Florida, but there's very few of them in Mississippi. These two maps reference the expansion of giant apple snail sightings. In 2002, you can see that they're only in Texas and Florida. Within 20 years, you can see their expansion all throughout the southeast United States, from Texas to South Carolina, down in Florida. The techniques over the years. In the beginning, before we knew much information, we created this device, the Snailinator. We used a wire grill brush and attached it to a long paint roller handle. We were able to use this to scrape off the egg masses from trees, stumps, boats, rocks, literally anything that the snails could climb on. We have had volunteers in the past from Gulf Course to help us scrape off the eggs. Later, we started developing software to help us better understand where these snails are coming from, their migration pattern, and how many snails were actually being captured. DMR's IT department and Coastal Preserves team developed an app to help us with data collection. Lastly, we partnered with Environmental Management Services, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and MDEQ to help us control the apple snails. Environmental Management Services created this modified crawfish trap to help us capture the snails. This graph shows the number of egg masses destroyed by month and year. You can see that each year was a growth, but in 2021 and 2022 was the most impactful. This was because of our partners. This graph shows the snails captured by month and year. In the beginning, it was difficult to capture the snails as they would drop in the water as soon as we got close. The biggest impact was year 2022 with the modified crawfish traps with the peak of 6,500 captured within September-October. The success rate that the Coastal Preserves team have had. More than 65,000 egg masses were destroyed. Over 5,300 snails were removed by hand. With the improved trapping and methods that we have, 21,577 snails were removed from trapping. Future plans that we have. Coastal Preserves program wants to ensure we do everything in our power to help control the snails against an infestation. We plan to continue monitoring and trapping. We want to improve our trapping equipment and the bait that we use. Lastly, we want to broaden our monitoring for early detection of new infestations. Thank you.
Good job. That's a lot of snails.
It's been 8 years in the process, and hopefully we'll keep doing it.
And see, not only killing snails, they do a great job on Salvinia, which they go out and try to help keep it under control. I don't think you can ever eradicate it, but you know, you can keep it under control. But they're also working in Bay St. Louis and what is the grass over there? The one, are you working on that, Sierra?
Yes, we have part of our team over there right now.
Yep.
Working on it.
Trying to get it. I tell you, these things come into the Gulf and they get into these canals and other areas, and when the fresh water gets to a certain level that can let them grow, they grow and they grow rapidly. And being able to get control of it is very hard. And I tell you what else, you don't want to mess with her with a chainsaw either, because she's pretty good with that. And so they do a great job. Thank you very much.
I'm just really curious. What do you bait the traps with?
We use commercial crawfish bait that's in the form of a pellet.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we're going to have wetlands permitting, Miss Willa Brantley.
Good morning. I have something a little bit different this morning than you're used to seeing from permitting. It was new for me, so it was a learning experience for me as well, preparing this. We have a request for a special management area designation and development of a special management area plan by the Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission. The location, there's 2 locations actually. It's a split between Port Bienville Industrial Park and Stennis International Airport and Air Park. Serving as their agent is Cypress Environment and Infrastructure. This is an overview of the 2 sites. You can see Stennis Airport in the north and Port Bienville in the south. There are over 5,700 acres at Port Bienville available for designation, and at the airport there are over 2,400 acres for designation. Okay, we're not moving forward, sorry. Okay, this it's a little hard to see, but this is the close-up at the Port Bienville. If you can see over to the northwest, that is where the canal is, and on the opposite side of the canal there are some marsh and tidal wetland areas. Most of the area, the wetlands present on the site would be non-tidal wetlands, so we would be able to move mitigation efforts over to that northwest side where we have tidal marsh. And then this one shows Stennis International Airport. Again, you've got mostly non-tidal wetlands, but you do have the riverine system on the north side, the Jordan River. So we could have some tidal wetlands up there and focus our mitigation efforts to the north in when we create the plan. So the goals of the planning process for special management areas are to apply the general provisions of the coastal program to a specific geographic area, to streamline regulatory decisions through planning for and resolving permit conflicts in advance of individual development projects being implemented. We'll also be able to coordinate federal and state regulatory decisions with efforts of the coastal program and local governments, and provide assistance to local governments and state agencies to plan for public facilities and services. And I've quoted from the coastal program a sentence that I really liked. It said that a distinguishing characteristic of SMA plans is that there will be a marriage of regulation and affirmative development efforts. So we all know that there's going to be development. We want to use our coastal resources wisely, and that's what the SMA planning process will hopefully allow us to do. So since we haven't done one of these, I think the only one that's been designated, or the only plan that has been developed, was developed back in 1985. So I wanted to go through some of what an SMA plan does and doesn't do, and what the process would be. So it does define boundaries, as you saw on the maps earlier. It describes how the physical development is to be managed. It recognizes environmental and economic factors, specifies implementation responsibilities of the different agencies involved, includes necessary interagency agreements and similar instruments, and includes analysis of all the environmental impacts and alternatives if we want the plan to prevail over the coastal program. Some of those management concerns that we'd be looking at include wetlands protection, industrial expansion, and efficient waterfront utilization, conservation of water resources and air and water quality, historical and archaeological preservation, scenic preservation, and the national interest. A couple of things that an SMA plan doesn't do: it does not allow DMR or any other state or federal agency to impose new regulatory authorities. So this is not a way that we can sneak in new regs without them being reviewed the normal way. And it doesn't require local governments to agree to the plan, meaning that DMR is not going to adopt the plan and require it to be followed unless the local government buys into it. So the Port and Harbor Commission's intent in requesting the SMA designation is to increase economic growth in Mississippi through jobs and investment by ensuring the state's purposes of economic development and protection of coastal resources are balanced, keep the environmental impacts contained within the two industrial sites, mitigate any necessary impacts ahead of development so future permitting is streamlined and predictable, and facilitate coordination between all the regulating agencies at the state, local, and federal level that are involved in permitting of developments. The plan would detail and describe clear guidelines and requirements for the environmental impacts. Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission has been given a grant to get ready as many shovel-ready projects as they can that are 100 acres or more. So that's their intent with this plan, is to make sure that those are coordinated among all the agencies and well-developed. So a little more specific justification. Port Bienville Industrial Park was actually designated as a special management area in the coastal program. Stennis Airport was not, but it does follow the same industrial and commercial uses as the industrial park. The Port of Pascagoula plan was the one that was approved in 1985. We did have several industrial and commercial areas, recreation areas that were designated in the coastal program in the mid-'80s. It says that management plans for all of those areas were supposed to be developed 1 or 2 a year, but in my research, I don't think any of that planning was funded, so it never took place past the Port of Pascagoula plan, which also expired in 2005. It will help decrease uncertainty of individual project planning. It will increase predictability of economic investment that's required. It'll provide for protection of priority wetlands and consolidation of on-site mitigation, meaning we can pick an area that would be higher quality and lump all of our mitigation in that area and hopefully be more successful. And it will address potential conflicts ahead of project development. So the next steps, if approved, DMR and responsible local government which would be the Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission, would enter into an agreement to develop the SMA plan. We would coordinate with federal, state, and local agencies to create the draft plan. We would have a public hearing on that draft plan, and based on any comments that we received through that public hearing and public notice, we would revise the plan. The final plan would be presented for DMR, local government, and appropriate federal agencies for concurrence, and there would be a public notice of the approval of that plan. And some of the stakeholders that could be involved in the creation of the plan would be the Mobile and Vicksburg District of the Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, U.S. EPA, the Mississippi Development Authority, NASA's Stennis Space Center, Mississippi Department of Transportation's Office of Intermodal Planning, Department of Archives and History, the Department of Environmental Quality, and the Hancock County Board of Supervisors. So some of the major elements of the plan would be the area development plan. That's where we establish the limits of the development and the guidelines for development for the area. Some examples of the guidelines include acreage and or quality of wetlands that could be developed. So we could say that only 25% of the total wetlands on site could be developed. We could say that only low and medium quality wetlands, those are things that we would work through. We could also talk about the cubic yardage of dredging allowed and circulation requirements for water quality. Those are just examples of things that could go in the plan. Then we would come up with a dredged material plan that would look at long-term maintenance dredging schedules and dredged material handling. For example, would it go to beneficial use? Would it be considered unsuitable for beneficial use and need to designate a disposal site? And in planning for dredging, we'll be able to consider the site itself as well as the channels that lead up to it for navigation. And then we would come up with the mitigation program so that potential investors and developers could know in advance what type and amount of mitigation would be necessary for specific impact types and amounts, and strategically plan for any on-site mitigation that may be needed. I believe it's been a couple of years that we had a project over there that impacted some tidal marsh and SAV, and they had to do on-site mitigation. So any future projects that would cause those kinds of impacts, they would already know, they would already have a place set aside to do mitigation and know what the economic investment would be required. And when you put all those together, that would remove some of the uncertainty in individual project planning, and it would make the economic investment more predictable. So our requested motion is for the commission to recommend approval of Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission's request for a special management area designation at Port Bienville Industrial Park and Stennis International Airport and Air Park. And then we would move forward with forming a task force and coming up with that draft plan.
A lot of information.
It is.
I thought we were talking about a place for people to go hunting whenever I saw a management area.
No, but if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. Also, their agent is here to answer any specific questions you may have about plans.
I understand the overall development, trying to get a scope early on, so you're not, spinning your wheels. But whenever when the individual portions of the project come up, will they come back for approval, or is that something you guys will do in house once the whole program's approved?
They would. You probably hear us talk about general permit guidelines a lot up here for piers and boathouses. The way I'm looking at it is it will be something like that for these larger developments. So if they come in and they meet the guidelines that are set up in the plan, they should be able to move right along through the permitting process pretty quickly and easily. If they wanted to do something or needed to do something that didn't meet the plan, doesn't mean they can't do it. It would just get a more rigorous individual evaluation.
I guess Blaine's here. Could maybe explain what this is going to do for Hancock County?
Morning, Director, Commissioners. So obviously a lot of detail, and just realize that I'm asking you to take action to do something that was last put in place before I was even born. So it's a lot to take in, but the purpose of today to getting your recommendation and approval is that as we're dealing with record amounts of investment related to infrastructure, and for us having more than 5,500 acres, trying to grow jobs, assess value, economic impact for the coast and the region and the county, to be able to define a lot of these conditions through that SMA plan on the front end will really help us attract, we believe, private industry. And more importantly, as we're working on building out infrastructure at Port Bienville and the airport, it'll help us be able to expedite and streamline that regulatory requirement. So again, I think the next decade, having this will allow us to prosper, grow, be able to communicate effectively on the front end, and work really effectively with Mississippi DMR as well as any other regulatory agency. So we'd appreciate it if you take this recommendation and approval, but I think it is a good tool and resource for us to effectively do our job to grow industry and jobs and investment.
So the overall hope of this is to take some land that we didn't think we could do much with and promote industrial growth in Hancock County.
Yes, and I'll use some examples. If you look at other ports throughout the state, other airports, they don't deal with the volume of, one, they don't have the land that Port and Harbor has under public control. But one of the conditions of that is about 60% of our land typically qualifies as some type of wetlands. So being able to identify that, program it, we believe will help us grow the industrial base. In addition, as we've dealt with the individual chemical manufacturing prospects, warehouse distribution, we often find that they want to have aggressive timelines, and we're not able to effectively communicate all the requirements on that on the front end. But we believe if we had this plan, it would help us obviously close some of these deals and lead to better opportunities for the region.
Okay.
You know, this is working on the airport commission here for the Gulfport Biloxi International. I know they have the same thing that they're looking at. Anytime that you can have something that simplifies the amount of time that you have to go through the process, that makes it a lot better for the person that's coming to look at it, to be able to, whether or not they want to invest into that property and invest into that area and do what they need to do. So I think this will greatly help that. And I think it'll give them a chance to say that, you know, you're going to be streamlined. It's not going to take near as long to get the process done. And so I think that makes a lot of difference in what we're looking at.
So we're essentially going to, I guess, simplified terms, we're going to cut out a lot of the beforehand legwork of somebody that would
Right,
potentially invest into this area with going ahead and figuring out the wetland stuff and all that. So you can hand them a packet and say, this is what you can and can't do.
And just to build on that, it doesn't just stop here, right? We're also trying to work with our agent and Cypress on looking at Section 214 permits with the Corps of Engineers as another step and a secondary tool. And we also, what makes Hancock County unique, right, is we have 130,000 acre buffer zone. No other county in the state has that. And being able to work on a mitigation bank or a mitigation plan utilizing land that can't be developed anyway, it makes it Hancock County a really unique application to move forward with an SMA plan.
Okay.
Hey, getting it as close as you can to shovel ready. That's the way you got to be.
Right. All right. Any other questions?
Brian, can you state your name and spell it for her so she can be able to put it in the record?
Yep. Blaine, Blaine, LaFontaine, Lafontaine. Thank you.
Thank you, Blaine. All right. Anything else?
I guess we need a motion.
Yeah. Just making sure we don't have any more questions. Motion to recommend approval of Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission's request for a special management area designation at Port Bienville Industrial Park and Stennis International Airport and Airport. I will be happy to make that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, I got off of, where are we at?
We're at, Bureau, we're going to finance. Finance.
Okay,
Finance.
Ms. Brewer. Oh, I see it now. All right, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting the financials for April 30th, 2023. At the end of April, our state revenue was $5.4 million. Our agency revenue was $64.7 million. Our state net income was a negative $1.1 million, and our agency net income is $35.7 million. We did get our GOMESA funding in April, which was $41,470,000. So that's why that's hiked up the way that is. Okay, after 10 months of 2023, there is 82.8% of the operating funds remaining in the budget, and the Tidelands is 38.5. Any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you. All right, Public Affairs, Ms. Charmaine.
Good morning, Commissioners, Director Spraggins, Legal. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources had 15 media mentions since the April MACMR meeting. News items included shrimp season closing, the announcement of red snapper season opening on May 26th, and the acceptance of GOMESA proposals through July 31st. Marine Patrol participated in a career fair at North Bay Elementary School on May 20th, Field Day at Nichols Elementary School on May 11th, and Career Day at Gaucher Elementary School May 15th. The Finfish Bureau's John Barr participated in Lunch with Alumni at Petal High School on April 19th. The Aquaculture Hatchery assisted with the Mississippi Bass Federation Tournament in D'Iberville May 6th and 7th. Katie Nelson in the Office of Coastal Resources Management represented the agency with a table at Eco Day at Infinity in Hancock County on April 22nd. Each bureau in the Office of Marine Fisheries, the NEAR, Coastal Resources Management, and Marine Patrol traveled to the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science in Jackson on May 6th for the first ever Marine Discovery Day. Our agency, along with Mississippi State, USM, and IMMS, took part in the event, providing fun and educational activities for attendees. The event served as a great opportunity to share information about our local species, ecosystem, and waters with an area of our state not near our marine resources. We held the 2023 Mississippi Seafood Cook-Off in Gulfport last Thursday in conjunction with the Gulfport Chamber of Commerce Taste, Rattle, and Roll at Centennial Plaza. It was a great night with 5 chefs competing for the title, and we're proud to announce that Calvin Light from Island View Casino is this year's Mississippi Seafood King, who won with his soft-shell crab dish, which was panko fried and stuffed with shrimp, crab, and mushrooms, served with a shrimp corn mac choux, jalapeno tomato jam, crystal beurre blanc, and topped with toasted pecans and jumbo lip crab. He will go on to compete among other U.S. states and territories at the Great American Seafood Cook-Off in New Orleans on August 5th.
All right, thank you. A lot going on.
We're gonna have a South Mississippian representing us in the seafood cook-off this time, right? All right. He, what was his name again? Yeah, out of Island View Casino.
Okay, cool. That's great. All right, marine fisheries, shrimp season update. Jason?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm giving the annual update on shrimp season.
A lot of money in shrimp.
Yeah, there is. Pretty good update. All right. So we go through a few of the historical metrics with y'all every year. This is historical opening dates for the shrimp season. Average opening dates, the 8th of June, and that goes back to 1975, but we do have historical openings in May as well as late June. This is our opening day vessel count. We do aerial surveys and on the water interviews with the fishermen on opening day. Last year was our lowest on record. Last year was also a pretty windy day, and there was some severe weather pushing through, so that affected the numbers, but we do see a consistent decline in effort. This shows our historical license sales back to 13-14, so the last 10 years. We see a consistent decline in commercial and rec license sales. We're looking at about just under 400 licenses sold for last year for commercial. And this is pretty consistent with what we see across the Gulf, state license holders and federal, as far as effort in this fishery. So just to get into a little bit of what we do in the spring to determine when to open the season, Gulf Coast Research Lab helps us out with post-larval sampling beginning in February using a Bing plankton trawl, and that really gives us an indication of when the small brown shrimp post-larvae are moving into the bay, into the nursery area. And then in April, we begin our trawl sampling at our 10 fixed stations. In April, that's once a week, and we do ramp up frequency to twice a week in early May. This sampling, we do chart data points on a plot and look at growth, daily growth, and that helps us project when they'll get to legal size. So this is from our trawl samples to date. We did sample yesterday. This is just a comparison of what we catch in those samples across the last few years, just to kind of show you there's a pretty good bit of variability, but generally when we see high catch, it's not a one-to-one comparison with what we see in landings data, but it does give us an indication that the brown shrimp are here. You'll see in 2019 through 2021, we know we had pretty poor seasons, but that was associated with Bonnie Carey and a couple of years that followed there. And this CPU is in per minute of trawl time. So these are our trawl stations that we historically have sampled in April and May. They are across the Sound. They go out to the ICW as far south as the ICW, and we do average catch or count size at all these stations, and that's a weighted average that gives us the size of the shrimp on that sample day. So in case you didn't already hear, we did put out the opening order yesterday. We set the season for Monday, May 22nd. Shrimp will be legal size, 68 count by that day, and we're looking forward to a good season. Just as a reminder, I didn't put the map up here, but Karen, can you go to the map just to make sure there's no confusion there? Because we have gotten some confusion from some of our fishermen. The area that we're open in all of those areas, inshore of the ICW and south, the area that stays open till the end of December is everything north of the ICW. However, areas south of the ICW, if you see the black line in the middle at the west side of Ship, that area closes at the end of April by statute. However, everything east of there stays open year round. So this area is always open and available to the fishery to catch. And I just want to make that clear. I think there's some confusion among some of the shrimpers that historically we did close everything south of the ICW, but since 2017 that has changed. Karen, can you go back to the PowerPoint? And then the last slide, sorry. Just wanted to remind everybody, we do have a skimmer trawl TED reimbursement program that's ongoing through the end of July 2024 for those folks that were affected by the NOAA rule change that required all vessels 40 foot and larger to have TEDs. So there's an application process there. I've got a link there, but they can always call Office of Marine Fisheries and get information on that program. And I'll take any questions you got.
I don't really have a question, just a comment, but your chart looked like what I've been seeing. We have been seeing a ton of bait in the water out there. It looks good.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about this year. Hopefully, we'll see that reflected in the catch over the next couple weeks. So,
been telling people for months now, we're seeing more shrimp in the water than I've seen in years out there.
Yep.
Is that shrimp and map available on the website? Because I think there is some confusion.
It is. It's on our Shrimp and Crab homepage, which is available under the Office of Marine Fisheries tab. If they just scroll down, that's right there, and they can actually print it out. But certainly, yeah, there is some confusion because it's sort of a recent not really recent change. It's been in place for about 5 years, but we want to make sure people are aware they can still shrimp after April 30th in some of our waters. So.
No, and I certainly appreciate the job you guys do. A lot of these states do it differently. They set individual dates, but you know, the way Mississippi is doing it, it's allowing the inshore fleet to go out there and catch those shrimp before they migrate off to federal waters. So,
Right.
you know, and we need all of them to make it happen.
Right. That's right.
One other thing, I know this is going to happen before the blessing of the fleet, and I'm sorry, but you know, we have to go ahead and let it happen, just as Jonathan said. You know, we need to be able to catch those shrimp and not let them migrate out to the south of the islands or wherever. And so this really helps our fishermen, and so it's more for them than anything, and to be able to get and also, I tell you what, it's going to be great to have a lot of fresh shrimp on Memorial Weekend.
Yep. We encourage everybody to get out and buy it at the dock if they can, you know, and support our fishermen. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
y'all.
All right, next up, oyster leases.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Ryder. I'm the Shellfish Bureau Director. Today, I will be reviewing the edits and amendments that were made to Title 22, Part 1, to conform with Senate Bill 2544. I'll go over the substantive changes within the document today. The non-substantive changes in the language have been provided to you in your packets, and we'll make those changes available on the website for public comments. But mainly, we're going to go over the added language in Chapter 10, the definitions, and then the amendment requirements for the leasing procedures. I will read a decent amount of this information, so please bear with me. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any time. So the first thing that we did is we did have to define some new definitions, or insert some new definitions. The first one we did was approved culture material. That's where we had just identified what we classify as approved culture material. The second term was event of default. And this is a circumstance where the leaseholder fails to fulfill their contractual obligations or breaches in the terms and conditions of the lease agreement for oyster production. The next definition that we added was on-bottom property classifications. We did this because we did identify different areas in our Mississippi waters for eligible for leasing. We classified them as 3 different things. I will read this definition. The categorization or classification of submerged lands or waters or water bottoms that are suitable for leasing or cultivating mollusk and shellfish as of July 1, 2023. The classifications are as follows. Class 1. Substantial shellfish resource and its recently improved bottoms. Class 2, minimal shellfish resource, improved bottoms. And Class 3, no resource or unimproved bottoms. Additional definitions, oyster spat. The early juvenile stage of an oyster, which is the larval oyster that has settled and attached to a hard substrate such as a shell or rock. Plat. A detailed map drawn to scale used to show the divisions and boundaries of a piece of land. It identifies the corner coordinates, describes the piece of land, its boundaries, and gives a description of the approved culture material and the amount to be deployed. The final definition that we added was state-owned reefs. So in the past, we had public reefs, and most of those have been transitioned into state-owned reefs. This is a designated area within the state's tidal water that is set aside for the protection, propagation, and management of oyster populations for the benefit of the environment and the oyster industry. The next update that we made was to Chapter 3. Because 49.15.39 was repealed, the Tongan line is no longer applicable, so we did delete that definition, or that Rule 3.4. Following in Chapter 3, we did update the shellfish growing waters opens and closings for state-owned reefs and private leases. We wanted to include both types, so we could identify and control those as needed. We also added allowable gear type. Oops, sorry, that's a slide. I apologize. In Chapter 4, we did identify the state-owned reefs that the definition I just read out. Those reefs will be listed in our titles and parts, and the high points of this are we do have a Henderson Point state-owned reef, Pass Christian Reef, Pass Marianne Reef, Biloxi Bay Reef, Shearwater Reef, Pascagoula West Reef, and Pascagoula Causeway Reef. We will have maps and coordinates available for the public to review. Moving on to Chapter 4, we added harvest language for on-bottom private leases, and we wanted to include all permits and regulations that were applicable to private leaseholders. Also, we wanted to make sure everyone understood the availability to harvest will be open year-round, but the waters will be subject to sampling and will be closed when the conditions do not meet harvest classification or conditions. So that's what C is referencing. Moving on to Chapter 5, we do have some tagging requirements. Rule 5.5, we did update it, private leases and state-owned reefs again. On Section A, all on-bottom and off-bottom molluscan shellfish reef lessees must adhere to the labeling and tagging rules and regulations outlined in the lease contract, lease permit, and the most current version of the NSSP model ordinance. Again, we updated state-owned reefs from public, and then we did delete Rule 5.6 and 5.7 because they're no longer needed. Moving on to Chapter 10, this is where the meat of the additions came from or revisions came from. I do have to read quite a bit of this. If you have any questions, please bear with me. So on Chapter 10, Rule 10.3, the first one that we updated was lease applications. We updated it from MDMR Director of Marine Fisheries to the authority to give the director the authority to execute these leases. We updated an application fee to $50. That will be rendered at the time of submission. They do have to submit a plat showing the proposed lease area using decimal degrees. And they also have to describe the culture material and the amount to be deployed on their application. Number 6 states, upon initial leasing of new areas pursuant to Senate Bill 2544, 2023 regular legislative session, the MDMR will issue a request for proposals, the response to which must include the following information in addition to the application. Identification of the classification of the property for lease, that references the definition that we stated earlier. Evidence of applicant's financial stability, proposed acreage to be leased, the amount of proposed acreage to be cultured and seeded, the time frame for which the cultivation and proposed lease will occur, and then the experience in reef development for the applicant. For the application review, we added this language. The MDMR authority will review and evaluate each lease application based on information provided through the request for proposal. 2 states that the approval of the lease applications will be based on the criteria established by the request for proposal and the evaluation of the information provided in the response. Next, number 3, the MDMR authority may request additional information from the applicant or conduct site visits as part of the evaluation process. Number 4, upon approval of the lease application, the applicant will be required to enter into a lease agreement with the MDMR, which will outline the terms and conditions of the lease, including rental rates, lease duration, and reporting requirements. Number 5 states leaseholders must comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including environmental and conservation requirements throughout the terms of the lease. And then finally, we did add number 8. The MDMR will either grant or deny the lease application, and the applicant will be notified in writing of the action on their lease application no less than 30 days after the action proposal. Continuing with Chapter 10, Rule 10.3, and these are the lease conditions. Senate bill updated the leasing terms and the amounts. It went from 5 years to 15 years for the term of the lease. So we updated that, and then we also, the leases expire on December 31st now. And then finally, the leases have increased. They have to be leased for 1 acre to 2,500 acres. And then we deleted rule number 11 out of that section. The lease conditions, this was again just modifying language to match Senate Bill. 12, we updated state-owned reefs, and then on number 13, we wanted to include ensuring maximum cultivation and propagation of oysters on their lease. This is language from the Senate bill that we wanted to match in our regulations. Section D of Chapter 10, Rule 10.3. This is the cultivation and propagation requirements. I will have to read this. Number 1, lessees shall propagate no less than 50% of the total bottom area leased within the first 5 years of the lease, with a minimum of 20% being propagated by year 2 of the lease agreement. A minimum of 10% per year shall be propagated for each year thereafter. This provision will not apply to Class 3 of the on-bottom property classifications. Number 2, the minimum planting density shall be no less than 60 cubic yards of approved culture per acre, or no less than 5 cubic yards of approved culture material within a minimum of 75,000 oyster spat per cubic yard. Number 3 states that must only culture species native to the Gulf of Mexico. Polyploid native species are prohibited. Imported shellfish seed to be used for grow out in Mississippi waters must be descendants of the broodstock originated in the Gulf of Mexico. The hatcheries where the aquaculture seed was produced must provide documentation of broodstock origin. Number 4, in instance of extreme environmental conditions designated by the department that are not conducive to oyster recruitment or survival, the cultivation requirements may be waived until favorable conditions resume. Number 5, planting, harvest, and cultivation activities shall be reported to the MDMR annually by December 31st. Number 6, MDMR staff will inspect culture material and volume prior to deployment to ensure conditions of the U.S. ACE permit are adhered to. Failure to meet the above requirements may deem an event of default. These are all the cultivation requirements that go with executing a lease agreement with the DMR. Moving on to Section E of Chapter 10, we updated the language to reference to match January 30th of each year, as the Senate bill says, and then we updated and the terminations and waivers of the lease agreements. This was outdated language, subdivisions that were included in Title 22 Part 1 that were no longer applicable, so we removed this. This is subdivisions. Next, we're moving on to Chapter 11. We're cleaning up language again. Bonding has been removed out of the Senate bill, so we removed it out of our titles and parts. And then the 5 years resident was removed, so we removed it out of the titles and parts. So with this is all the language in our in Title 22 Part 1 that references leasing to private individuals, oyster leasing to private individuals. It should match the new Senate bill. At this time, I think we will make a recommendation to the Executive Director that the proposed changes to Title 22 Part 1 be sent to the Secretary of State's office for notice of intent. Does anyone have any questions? I know it was a lot.
The big thing about this, obviously, if you approve this and I sign it, then we can send it forward. We can get it out then and put it out for 30-day public notice, so people can have a chance to comment and be able to see what we need to do, and if there's any issues on it, then Sandy, tell me if I'm right or wrong. After that point, depending on how many people ask for comments, we'll decide about a public hearing and be able to decide when we would do that. The goal, if we can get this passed, is to try to get it done sometime in July, if that would be right. And if we could, we would be glad to do that. And maybe a July meeting, and it might work out perfect for that if everything works great. Commissioner, we also have a public comment on this. Before you vote, I'd ask you to bring that up.
Yep, that's what I was fixing to bring up. So we do have a public comment on this. Mr. Ignacio Lopez.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ignacio Lopez. I'm the aquaculture instructor at Moss Point High School.
Turn that mic on right there. There's a little button down.
Can you hear me all right?
It's on it. If you don't mind, would you spell your name for her, please?
Ignacio Lopez. I'm the aquaculture instructor at Moss Point High School at the Votech Center over there, and we're looking to do fully vertically integrated oyster gardening on steroids, right? So what we're actually trying to do is lease or start a nonprofit organization that leases private land or leases this land to cultivate oysters for restoration purposes and conservation purposes, not necessarily for harvest. And so we would actually like to lease Lake Catchall or part of Lake Catchall in the Pascagoula River estuary to create a floating oyster nursery. This would help the students in boating education, oyster aquaculture education, and potentially post-graduation employment opportunities. Additionally, we would like to lease restricted waters or prohibited waters that are near shore and or urbanization to create these reefs for restoration in a more fuel efficient and time efficient manner. We would like to harvest part of this shell stock to disperse mature and gravid oysters throughout various restoration leases and potentially into harvestable leases as well. It's not clear necessarily what is and what isn't approved as culture material, and we would like to propose alternatives to the standards. I know that plastic isn't necessarily approved, but people do use PVC trees and PVC forests for bass habitat, and we think that that would be a great way to keep oysters off the bottom. So yeah, that's what I would like to contribute to this, is potentially the lease of non-approved waters to cultivate oysters for restoration purposes and environmental benefits.
Okay.
We met with Mr. Lopez over at school, I guess, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
tomorrow, yeah.
And he's got a great program. He's trying hard. He's trying very hard to be able to put something together to be able to teach students to how to have a future. And, you know, some of these students don't have an opportunity to do things, and he's trying to be able to put together something that would be able to allow these students to have a trade that they could take once they leave high school, and they could take it and operate it into the business world in some form or some fashion, whether they start their business or whether they work for someone in that business, and that's what he's looking at. Wet storage is one of the things he's looked at. He's looked at that and trying to be able to understand and teach how to do it. He's got a great little operation that they've set up by themselves. I mean, they have absolutely set it up by themselves, and they did all the work themselves to be able, the students building it. We're working through some things to try to help them to be able to get permitted to do different things there. But I tell you, he's trying hard, and you know, anything that, you know, we'll look at it any way we can to try to help him. And if there's a way to be able to grow some oysters in a non-harvestable area, that'd be great, you know, because we can at least get that for the oysters itself and what's going to happen. But I think that, you know, they're trying to do the best they can, and he's doing a wonderful job of trying to do the best he can to help the students to learn. And we have this at St. Martin's, I think, now, and we have it at St. Stanislaus, and we have it at Gulfport. I mean, not Gulfport, but Ocean Springs, and now Moss Point. And I'll tell you what better way than to get some young students learning about aquaculture. And I want to help him. I'm trying to work out a way to give him a grant. And so I'm trying to work out a way to do that, to give him some type of a grant to be able to help him with this, and because I think it's a great deal. And, you know, I guess that now that what you're asking for is to be able to look at this, being able to lease some, and we might be able to look at that. If it's for a nonprofit organization and a school, maybe we could lease it and get the legislature to let us not have to even charge for the lease, you know, to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
How many acres are you wanting?
The key thing is not necessarily having to, you know, go way out offshore where it might be cost prohibitive. The 60 cubic yards of material per acre is pretty high, especially if you have to purchase it. So, you know, kind of change or add that to the Title 22 as a potentially other alternative to going about this oyster aquaculture, not necessarily for harvest for human consumption.
And I don't know, I guess it's legal to mention that you're working on something else too about carbon monoxide credits, right?
Well, that's where the revenue from this project would come from, and that's how it would become self-sustaining, not necessarily just through grants, but through selling the carbon offsets that these oysters provide.
You know, oysters absorb and take quite a bit of that. And I learned a lot from him in a few hours. I sat there and I came out of there with a question in my head of like, what? You know, what is this? You know, carbon monoxide credits. Well, I mean, you know, it's something, and then I've been talked to by several people after that. It's a situation, especially in the Northwest and the Northeast, that is being utilized. But these carbon monoxide credits, and basically a big industry puts out a certain amount, and so they're buying credits. And what better way than to be able to buy credits by using oysters and letting the oysters turn around and then feed the estuary and do the things that they're doing. So we're working hard. Don't think we're not. All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yep.
All right, so, but we need a motion. Okay. We got a motion to recommend the notice of intent.
I'll make that motion.
We have, all right, all in favor? Aye. All right, great.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. All right, so do we have any other business today?
Just a couple things. The two commissioners, one on the right and one on the left, have been reappointed. So Commissioner Daniels and Commissioner McClendon have been reappointed. So we'd appreciate that, and thank y'all for being able to serve. Pam is not up for reappointment. So it's not that we left him out. All right, so he's not up for reappointment, but we do appreciate that. And the other thing to Panny family, thank y'all so much and for coming today. And, you know, it's an honor to be able to do this in his name, to be able to have something that people will remember for the rest of their life, and it'll stay here long even after you young ones are gone. It'll still be here, you know, and it'll be there forever, and we appreciate y'all, and it's an honor to do that.
We were happy to be able to be a part of that.
Oh, and the other thing, too, on this bill that we're talking about, it was Senator Moran, Senator Thompson, and House Member Ladner and Felcher. They're the ones that are chairing this and pushing this very hard, and to do their own bottom leases. So I think it's a great deal. Louisiana and Texas are doing it, and you know, it's worked out great for them, and hopefully it'll work out great for us. And to be able to put somebody, because when you think about this and you think about their own bottom, you say, well, wait just a minute. But if I've got a business and I've invested my money and my time into this, then I'm going to try to make it work hard. If the state of Mississippi doesn't have the money and the Department of Marine Resources to manage 8,000 or 10,000 acres of oyster land, you know, bottoms, but individuals can manage it, and we will still be able to have our own. We'll have 20% of it that we'll keep, and we'll still manage that and be able to work it. But I don't know how much you know about oysters, but probably the one thing that keeps the estuary going. And it feeds more than anything in the estuary. And so getting people to be able to grow these and be able to put their money into it, and they'll be able to harvest them, and then they'll be able to do it, and it'll be a year-round operation. The only time that the Department of Marine Resources will get in the middle of that and try to do anything is if, number one, the water quality gets bad, you know, in the area. We'll have to do it, and we will work with them on that. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to put an oyster out that's going to hurt anybody anyway. So I think it's going to be fantastic, and I look forward to seeing a lot of businesses started with this, and hopefully we can move forward. Thank you, sir.
Sounds great. All right, no other business. We took care of the public comments. Jonathan, would you like to close this today?
Yes, certainly. We would like to close in honor of Mr. Arnie Galat Jr. He recently passed away a few weeks back. Mr. Arnie was a longtime contributor to the automation of the shrimp processing industry here on the Gulf Coast, and our thoughts and our prayers are with his family.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Everyone have a nice day. Thank you.